And Democratic strategist James Carville is calling out Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just days after she launched her campaign for Senate. Carville saying the progressive Democrat is breaking a critical rule in politics. Happy to bring in Melissa DeRosa. She's a Democratic strategist, and Noah Rothman, senior writer at a National Review. We got to hear from Carville. We're going to bring him up. Let's listen.
Well, just the issue of Jasmine Crockett. First of all, she seems like she's well educated. Seems like that she's got a lot of energy. But she, to me, she violates the first rule of politics, and that is in politics you always make it about the voters and never about yourself. If you listen to her talk, it's a lot more about herself than it is the voters.
I know a lot of young people don't necessarily want to listen to James Carville anymore, but does he have a point?
He absolutely has a point. And it's not just that she's talking about herself, it's that she's talking about going in and lecturing Supreme Court justices as a U.S. senator, and she's using some inflammatory language towards Trump, which it's fine if you're trying to excite the Democratic base in some parts of the country, but it's certainly not going to win you statewide in Texas.
Okay, well, she was talking again yesterday. All right, so sure, Carville was happy about that, right? Here she is on The View going after the U.S. Supreme Court.
But it comes down to whether or not they have to finally have some ethics about themselves, because they are the only justices in this country that do not have any ethical guidelines, or whether it is literally that we just are bringing them in and we are going to have a little conversation with the justices. That comes from only the Senate, or when we're talking about confirming justices, if we're going to expand the court, or if we're talking about whether or not some of these bad actors that are in this administration, if they're going to potentially be held accountable, you got to have the votes in the Senate.
All right, my bad. That was Joy Reid. Maybe she's part of The View someday, but not today. Go ahead there, Noah.
I mean, even that exchange was self-indulgent. Why go on that forum unless you could say you're trying to appeal to the Texas primary electorate. I don't know what percentage follows that program. I bet it's probably small. Most likely she was there in order to receive the gratification that you would by basking in very friendly attention. Any politician who has statewide or national ambitions is a little narcissistic, even by politician standards.
Yep.
Her self-regard is astronomical. And to the notion that she's a very smart person, she's probably a very trained politician, but we know this because she is very well educated, and she had a very different persona when she was a much younger figure, not on the national stage. And that's going to come out when she reaches a general electorate. People are going to ask, who is the real Jasmine Crockett? And I don't think we know the answer to that.
But she is a fresher face and a newer, younger face. And Michelle Obama was just talking about this yesterday. She would like to see some older members see themselves out. Here's what she said.
My husband said this recently. I mean, one of the problems with society today is that nobody wants to move on from leadership. Leaders are supposed to move on to make room for the next generation that has new ideas, new energy. But because there's no place for our senior leaders to go with honor and dignity, I think people hold on too long.
Okay, so here's just a list. We can pull it up here for you here for how many members are over the age of 80. There's quite a few of them. How real is this feeling amongst the Democratic Party?
You know, listen, when I hear Michelle Obama saying that, I'm not really hearing her, say we should put some of the older members on igloos and send them off to sea. What I hear her saying is really she's talking about institutional players, and that there's this backlash to the institutional players who've been hanging around a long time. Because you know what I don't hear? That same flank of the party saying Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren should go. So I think that really the criticism is about institutional players and more moderate players and bringing in some of the far left voices than necessarily getting rid of some of the older
But is that a bad idea?
players. From my perspective, if we want to win statewide, if we want to keep the House, if we want to win the presidency, we've got to be appealing to moderate Democrats or moderate Americans. And that doesn't have to do with your age. That has to do with your faculties. That has to do with your effectiveness. That has to do with your vision and your connectivity to voters.
You know, no, if I heard it right, she said there's no place for our senior leaders to go with honor and dignity. What is that?
A senior political home?
Whoa.
Retirees?
She said honor and dignity. Did I interpret this incorrectly?
I don't know what she's talking about there. I disagree with what she's trying to say. And I think what she's trying to say is popular. The notion that we should have age tests is just as popular, for example, as term limits. And therefore, I think it's cheap. It's it's not an unpopular position to say, therefore she's not risking very much. And I disagree with her insofar as I think this is motivated by the Joe Biden situation. But Joe Biden's situation was that he was decrepit. He had lost control of his faculties. That does not describe Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Grassley. Should they be put out to pasture? No. Age tests are just an indiscriminating way of imposing this sort of generational revolutionary shift on the political class that you couldn't otherwise engineer at the ballot box. And that, to me, is a reform that I think would backfire on the political culture.
I love having you guys here. Thank you so much.
Great stuff. We will keep our honor and our dignity.
Yes, we shall.
We hope.